When Steve Austin snapped for real, it wasn't just great TV. It was real chaos that even Vince McMahon couldn't stop. This isn't about scripted stunners or beer bashes. These are 5 moments where WWE's top star did things his way and left the company scrambling. But what happens when your biggest star stops playing by your rules? Not in the ring, but backstage, on live TV, or in a boardroom. Let's find out. Professional wrestling is supposed to be controlled. Every punch is planned. Every kick is choreographed. Every word is written by someone backstage. The wrestlers are performers following a script given to them by management. That's how it's always worked. The boss tells you what to do, and you do it. You don't ask questions. You don't talk back. You definitely don't ignore orders and do your own thing. But Stone Cold Steve Austin never played by those rules. He was different from the very beginning, and the more popular he got, the more impossible he became to control. What started as small acts of rebellion grew into full-blown mutiny. By the time Austin was the biggest star in the company, management had a serious problem. They needed him too badly to punish him, but letting him do whatever he wanted created chaos everywhere. The 5 stories you're about to hear aren't legends or exaggerations. They're documented moments where Austin went completely off the rails and WWE had no choice but to let it happen. Some of these moments made the company millions of dollars. Others almost destroyed Austin's career. But all of them proved the same thing. When Steve Austin decided something was going to happen his way, there was nothing anyone could do to stop him. In 1996, WWE was in serious trouble. They were losing badly to their rival, World Championship Wrestling. Fans were leaving in huge numbers. Ratings were dropping every single week. The company needed something new, something different, something that could save them. But what they got wasn't planned at all. It came from a guy with a busted lip who decided to ignore what management wanted and do his own thing instead. The wrestling business was changing fast. WCW had signed Hulk Hogan, the biggest name in wrestling history. They had signed Randy Savage. They had signed multiple former WWE stars. And they were winning the ratings war. Every Monday night, more people watched WCW Monday Nitro than WWE Monday Night Raw. WWE was hemorrhaging viewers and hemorrhaging money at the same time. The style of wrestling WWE was doing wasn't working anymore. They had colorful characters with silly gimmicks, guys dressed like garbage men, and hockey players and evil dentists. It was cartoonish. It was aimed at children, and adult fans were tuning out because they wanted something more realistic, something grittier, something that felt less like a kid's show and more like real competition. Management knew they needed to change, but they didn't know how. They were stuck in their old ways. They kept booking the same type of characters and the same type of stories. Nothing was connecting with audiences anymore. The King of the Ring tournament that year was supposed to be won by Triple H. Management loved him. They saw him as the future. He had the look, he had the skills, he was reliable. The whole tournament was built around crowning him as the winner. But then something happened that changed everything. At Madison Square Garden, Triple H made a huge mistake. He broke character and hugged his friends Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, who were leaving for WCW. This was called the curtain call incident. Management was furious. Triple H was being punished immediately. So who would win the tournament now? They picked Steve Austin, a guy who had been stuck with a terrible gimmick called the Ringmaster. He wore a stupid jacket and barely talked. Nobody cared about him, but Austin had convinced them to let him speak. He had convinced them to let him be himself. Now he was getting this opportunity, not because they believed in him, but because their golden boy screwed up. On June 23rd, 1996, Austin was not in good shape. During his semifinal match against Mark Marrow, he got hit hard. His lips split open badly. Blood was everywhere. He needed stitches right away. They took him to a hospital during the show. He got sewn up quickly and rushed back to the arena. He was in pain. He was angry. He was frustrated with his career, frustrated with the company, frustrated with everything. When Austin got back, Michael Hayes stopped him. Hayes was a backstage interviewer and creative consultant. He told Austin something important. Jake Roberts, the guy Austin would face in the finals, had cut a promo earlier. Roberts was playing a born-again Christian character at the time. He was recovering from real substance abuse problems in his life. In his interview, Roberts talked about the Bible. He talked about his faith. He said his prayers would help him win. Austin heard this and something clicked. He was already mad. He was in pain. And now he had ammunition. When it was time for his post-match interview, he didn't follow any script. There was no script. Nobody told him what to say. He just grabbed the microphone and let it rip. First, he told Roberts to get out of his ring. He didn't ask. He ordered. Then he went after Roberts' whole character. Austin said Roberts could sit there and thump his Bible and say his prayers, but it didn't get him anywhere. This was brutal. Wrestling had always been about good guys who prayed and did the right thing, winning in the end. Austin was saying that was garbage. Virtue doesn't win fights. Toughness does. Then came the line that changed everything. Austin said, "Talk about your Psalms. Talk about John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says, "I just whipped your ass." The crowd went insane. They had never heard anything like it. A wrestler wrestler mocking the Bible on live TV, a wrestler saying prayers don't matter. This was totally new. Here's the thing, management didn't understand at first. This was dangerous. John 3:16 is one of the most famous Bible verses in America. You see it on signs at football games. Religious groups use it everywhere. Austin just mocked it on national television. Advertisers could have pulled out. Sponsors could have complained. The company could have faced serious backlash, but management had no warning. They had no chance to stop it. Austin went off script completely. They found out what he said when everyone else did, and by the time they realized what happened, the damage was done. Except it wasn't damage at all. It was the opposite. The Austin 3:16 catchphrase became the biggest merchandise seller in wrestling history. Millions of t-shirts sold. Millions of dollars poured in. The fans loved it because it felt real. It felt like someone was finally telling the truth. Wrestling had been too clean, too fake, too nice for too long. Austin was raw and angry and real. He was saying what fans wished they could say to their bosses, to authority figures, to anyone who tried to control them. Within weeks, Austin 3:16 shirts were everywhere. You saw them at wrestling shows. You saw them at football games. You saw them in malls and schools and workplaces. The phrase transcended wrestling. It became part of pop culture. People who didn't even watch wrestling knew what Austin 3:16 meant. From a business perspective, this was a goldmine. WWE had been struggling to sell merchandise during this period. Their old stars like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels sold some shirts, but nothing massive. The cartoon character merchandise from the early 90s had stopped working. Kids didn't want to buy shirts with bright colors and silly slogans anymore. But Austin 3:16 was different. It was cool. It was rebellious. It was something teenagers and young adults wanted to wear. And WWE started printing money from it. The company made millions and millions of dollars from a catchphrase they didn't create, didn't approve, and initially didn't even want. This moment forced WWE to change their entire direction. They couldn't go back to the old style anymore. The fans had spoken. They wanted this new version of wrestling, so WWE had to follow Austin's lead, not the other way around. A wrestler who was supposed to follow orders had just rewritten the whole company's future because he trusted his gut over their planning. Management had lost control, but they made more money than ever. That's the irony. The moment they couldn't stop became the moment that saved them, but it set a dangerous precedent. Austin now knew he could ignore what they wanted and succeed anyway. Let's go back even further to a time before Austin was a star, before he had money, before anyone knew his name. In the late 1980s, he worked in Memphis for a wrestling territory called the United States Wrestling Association. It was run by Jarrett, a veteran promoter who controlled the wrestling business in that region. Jerry's son, Jeff Jarrett, also wrestled there, but their situations were totally different, like night and day. Steve Austin was a rookie making almost nothing. He has talked in interviews about eating raw potatoes because he couldn't afford real food, not cooked potatoes, not potatoes with butter or salt or anything on them, just raw potatoes because they were cheap and filled his stomach. He lived in horrible conditions. His apartment was a dump. His car barely ran. He was grinding every single day, trying to make it in the wrestling business, barely surviving from week to week. The pay in territory wrestling was terrible for rookies. You worked your body to death for maybe $100 a week if you were lucky, sometimes less. You drove yourself to shows. You paid for your own food and gas and hotels. By the time you covered your expenses, there was almost nothing left. Austin was living this nightmare, wondering if he had made a huge mistake trying to be a wrestler. Meanwhile, Jeff Jarrett was the boss's son. He was pushed as a star. He made good money. He had it easy. One night after a show, the wrestlers got their paychecks. Austin looked at his and felt sick. It was so small. He was staring at it, trying to figure out how he would survive another week. Jeff Jarrett walked by and saw him. Instead of being sympathetic, Jarrett made a comment. He said, "It's not going to get any bigger if you keep staring at it." To Jeff, maybe it was a joke. To Austin, it was an insult. Here was a guy born into privilege, someone who never struggled, making fun of someone who was barely eating. Austin took it personally. He took it very personally, and he never forgot it. Years later, both men ended up in WWE. By 1997, Austin was the biggest star in the business. Jeff Jarrett returned to WWE in October of that year after time in WCW. The creative team saw an opportunity. They wanted to create a feud between Austin and Jarrett. It made sense on paper. Austin was the top guy. Jarrett needed a program. Put them together and make money. So they had Jarrett cut a promo attacking Austin. Jarrett called the Austin 3:16 merchandise blasphemous. He said it was offensive to Christians like himself. He went after Austin's brand directly. For the writers, this was just standard wrestling storytelling. Create conflict, build heat, make fans want to see them fight. But Austin saw it differently. He believed Jarrett was attacking the thing that put food on his table. The Austin 3:16 brand was Austin's livelihood. And here was Jeff Jarrett, the same guy who mocked him for being poor in Memphis, trying to tear it down. On top of that, Austin didn't respect Jarrett as a draw. He didn't think Jarrett could sell tickets or generate real money. He saw Jarrett as a mid-card guy at best. So when the creative team proposed a full feud between them, Austin said no. Not a negotiation, not a discussion, just no. He refused to work with Jeff Jarrett, period. By 1998, Austin had the power to make that stick. He was the company's top star. He sold the most merchandise. He drew the biggest ratings. If Austin said he wouldn't do something, management couldn't force him. They needed him more than he needed any individual feud. According to people backstage, including Jim Ross, Austin made it clear in creative meetings that a program with Jarrett would never happen. He wouldn't give Jarrett the rub, meaning the boost to his career that comes from working with the top star. Austin's refusal was absolute and personal. This had real consequences. Jeff Jarrett's career in WWE stalled. Without access to the main event scene and without a program with Austin, he was capped at the mid-card level. He mostly fought for the Intercontinental Championship, which was important but not the top prize. Jarrett saw the writing on the wall. He wasn't going to get to the top in WWE as long as Austin was there and holding a grudge. So in October 1999, Jarrett decided to leave. His exit was messy. He was still Intercontinental Champion when his contract expired. He held Vince McMahon up for a large cash payment to drop the title to China before he walked out the door. It was a power move, but also a desperate one. After leaving WWE, Jarrett bounced around. He went to WCW briefly, but eventually in 2002, he founded his own company, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, known as TNA. He became his own boss because he couldn't succeed under WWE's structure, largely because of Austin's veto. Think about that. An entire wrestling promotion exists, partly because Steve Austin refused to forgive a comment made in a locker room over a decade earlier. That's how much control Austin had. He didn't just control his own career, he controlled other people's careers too. Management couldn't do anything about it. They needed Austin too badly. This wasn't about business, this was personal. And Austin let a personal grudge dictate company policy. For him, it was about self-respect and not forgetting where he came from. For WWE, it was a loss of creative freedom. They couldn't book the feuds they wanted because their top star said no. Now let's jump to January 1998. WWE was still losing to WCW in the ratings war. Every Monday night felt like another defeat. WCW Monday Nitro was beating WWE Monday Night Raw almost every single week. The gap was getting wider. WWE was running out of options and running out of time. They needed something massive for WrestleMania 14. They needed mainstream attention that would break through the wrestling bubble and get people talking in the real world. So they brought in Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet. Tyson was one of the most famous athletes in the world. He was a former heavyweight boxing champion. He was also one of the most dangerous and unpredictable people you could possibly put on live television. Tyson was a huge name, but also a huge risk. He had just been suspended from boxing for biting Evander, Holyfield's ear in a fight. The image of Tyson spitting out a piece of Holyfield's ear was shown on every news channel in the world. It was one of the most shocking moments in sports history. Tyson was seen as violent, unstable, capable of anything, but he was famous. And WWE needed fame more than they needed safety. They needed someone who would get the attention of people who didn't normally watch wrestling. Tyson was that person. So they paid him a massive amount of money to appear on Raw and get involved in the WrestleMania storyline. The plan was to have Tyson appear on Monday Night Raw and get into a confrontation with Steve Austin. The idea was simple: a little shove, some tension, then security would pull them apart. It would look intense but be safe. At least that was the plan. But Tyson wasn't a wrestler. He didn't understand working, which is the art of making something look real without it being real. He was a real fighter. When Austin interrupted his introduction and flipped him off with the double middle fingers, Tyson's instincts kicked in. Tyson shoved Austin. Not a wrestling shove, a real shove. Austin later said that Tyson pushed the shit out of me. It was genuine heavyweight force. Austin felt it hard, and in that moment, he had a choice. He could back down and look weak in front of millions of people, or he could match that energy. Austin chose to match it. He shoved back. The confrontation became real. Security rushed in, but they were struggling. This wasn't choreographed anymore. This was two alpha males who didn't want to back down. Chaos broke out. Here's a detail most people miss. During the brawl, money started flying everywhere. $100 bills exploded out of Mike Tyson's pockets. Austin said he could see cash fluttering across the ring while security tried to pull them apart. Tyson's handlers weren't just trying trying to break up the fight. They were on their hands and knees scrambling to pick up thousands of dollars before it was lost in the chaos. This image shows how out of control the moment was. The money wasn't a prop, it was real cash from Tyson's real life crashing into the wrestling show. The handlers were panicking, management was panicking, Kevin Dunn in the production truck was probably panicking. Nobody knew how far this would go, but it worked. The mainstream media covered it like it was a real fight. ESPN talked about it, news networks talked about it. People who didn't watch wrestling were suddenly interested. The blur between reality and performance was exactly what WWE needed. This moment is credited as the turning point where WWE finally started beating WCW in the ratings. But it was a success built on WWE's willingness to let Austin interact with someone they couldn't control. Tyson could have really hurt Austin. Austin could have really hurt Tyson. The legal and financial risks were enormous, yet management allowed it because they were desperate. And Austin, as always, trusted his instincts over safety or planning. He escalated when he could have de-escalated. He made it feel real when it was supposed to feel fake. And once again, chaos paid off. But it was chaos nonetheless. Monday Night Raw was broadcast live via satellite. Those satellite windows cost serious money. The feed was purchased in specific time blocks. If the show ran over its allotted time, the satellite feed would cut to black and fans at home would see nothing. On top of that, arenas have strict curfews. Going past the curfew meant massive overtime costs for union stagehands, security, riggers, and local police. After the TV cameras stopped rolling, WWE would often have a dark match or post-show celebration. This was a tradition where the top babyface the good guy fans loved would celebrate with the crowd and send them home happy. For Austin, this usually meant drinking beers and soaking in the cheers, but even this had a time limit. On one specific night, Austin was in the ring doing his usual celebration. The crowd was loud. The energy was great. Austin was throwing beers and having a good time. But up in the production truck, Kevin Dunn, WWE's executive producer, was watching the clock. The show was over. The satellite window was closing. They needed to wrap up. Dunn gave the signal to go home. This signal gets relayed to the ring, usually through the referee or the timekeeper. It might also show up on monitors visible to the wrestlers. The message was clear. End the celebration. Get out of the ring. We're done. Austin ignored it. He kept drinking. He kept celebrating. He kept interacting with the fans. Dunn gave the signal again, probably with more urgency this time. Austin ignored it again. He stayed in the ring for nearly 20 minutes past the original go-home cue. Every minute cost money. The satellite feed was burning cash. The arena staff were now on overtime. Security was on overtime. Everyone was on the clock, and the clock was expensive. All because Steve Austin decided the moment wasn't over yet. The next week, Vince McMahon confronted Austin backstage. McMahon was angry, not about the content of the celebration, but about the cost. He told Austin that his refusal to leave the ring had triggered overtime clauses with the arena and the production crew. The total damage was around $15,000. McMahon said, "God dang it, you cost me like 15 grand going overtime like you did." For most wrestlers, this would have been a career-ending moment. Defying the boss and costing the company money, that's grounds for firing or severe punishment. But Austin wasn't most wrestlers. His reaction was telling. He didn't apologize. He didn't back down. Instead, he offered to split the bill or pay the full amount himself. His reasoning was simple. The extra 20 minutes he spent with the fans was worth more than $15,000 in future ticket sales and merchandise. He saw it as a marketing investment, not a waste. From Austin's perspective, his relationship with the live crowd was the foundation of his value to the company. Those fans went home talking about how Austin stayed late just for them. They felt special, they felt connected, and they would come back and bring friends. From WWE's perspective, Austin had just held their entire production hostage. He ignored direct orders from the production team. He ignored the curfew. He ignored the budget. He did what he wanted when he wanted, and he didn't care about the consequences. This incident shows a different type of lost control. It wasn't creative. It wasn't about a storyline. It was logistical. Austin decided that his instincts about fan engagement were more important than the company's operational constraints. And because he was Steve Austin, he got away with it. Management couldn't fire him. They couldn't punish him effectively. All they could do was send him a bill, which he was willing to pay and move on. Once again, Austin proved that he operated under different rules than everyone else. By June 2002, Steve Austin was falling apart in every way possible. Physically, his body was breaking down piece by piece. His knees were bad from years of taking bumps and landing hard on them thousands of times. Every step hurt. His neck, which had been surgically repaired in 1997 after Owen Hart dropped him on his head, caused him constant pain. The doctors had told him that one wrong move could paralyze him or worse. He was wrestling on borrowed time with a body that was barely holding together. Mentally, he was exhausted and burned out. He had been the company's top star for years. That meant carrying the entire company on his back through good times and bad. When storylines were weak, Austin had to make them work through sheer force of personality. When creative had no ideas, Austin had to improvise and save the show. When ratings dropped, everyone looked at Austin to fix it. The pressure was constant and crushing. Austin couldn't have an off night. He couldn't phone it in. Every single time he walked through that curtain, he had to be perfect. The fans expected it, the company demanded it, and Austin delivered it over and over again. But by 2002, he was running on empty. The Invasion storyline in 2001 had been a massive disappointment. WWE had bought WCW and ECW, their two biggest competitors. This should have been the biggest angle in wrestling history, but creative botched it completely. The storyline made no sense. The matches were forgettable, and Austin was stuck in the middle of it, trying to make garbage storylines seem important. Then in 2002, WWE brought back the New World Order, the group that had helped WCW beat them in the ratings years earlier. This should have been huge, but it wasn't. The NWO and WWE felt like a nostalgia act, not a real threat. And once again, Austin was expected to make it work somehow. Austin felt like creative was just throwing things at the wall and expecting him to make it stick without any long-term planning. He was tired of it, and then they handed him the script for an upcoming episode of Raw in Atlanta. What he read made him snap. The booking called for a King of the Ring qualifying match between Steve Austin and Brock Lesnar. Lesnar was the new monster rookie, the next big thing. He was big, athletic, and being groomed as the future of the company. The script said Austin would lose to Lesnar to build Lesnar up. Austin's problem wasn't with losing. He had put over The Rock. He had put over Kurt Angle. He had put over Triple H. Austin understood the business. Someone has to lose to make someone else look good. That wasn't the issue. The issue was how they were doing it. A first-time match between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Brock Lesnar was a dream match. It was the kind of match that could headline a major pay-per-view and make millions of dollars. There should be weeks of build-up, promos, tension, story, make people desperate to see it, then deliver it on pay-per-view where fans have to pay to watch. Instead, creative wanted to give it away on free television with no build-up whatsoever. It was just a throwaway qualifier for a tournament. From Austin's perspective, this was terrible business. They were wasting a money match for a quick rating boost. He called it pissing away millions of dollars. Austin tried to explain this to Vince McMahon and the creative team. He said he would do the job, meaning he would lose to Lesnar, but not like this. Not on free TV with no build. Save it for a pay-per-view. Make it special. Make it mean something. Make money from it. Management disagreed. They wanted it on Raw. They wanted it now. They believed a big match on free TV would boost ratings and generate buzz. Austin thought they were short-sighted. The argument went nowhere. Neither side would budge. So Steve Austin made a decision. He didn't go to the arena. Instead, he went to the airport and flew home to San Antonio, Texas. He quit the company without notice. He simply vanished. WWE was in chaos. They had advertised Austin for the show. Fans were expecting him. Now he was gone, and they had no way to deliver what they promised. Vince McMahon had to make a choice. He decided to destroy Austin's character on live television. McMahon told Jim Ross, Austin's closest friend in the company, to go on TV and explain Austin's absence. Ross was heartbroken, but did what he was told. He delivered the famous line that Austin had taken his ball and gone home. It was a devastating insult. It painted Austin as a quitter who abandoned the fans. WWE followed up with a segment on their show Confidential, where they dissected the incident in detail. They portrayed Austin as selfish and unprofessional. The message was clear. Steve Austin was no longer a hero. He was a coward who quit when things didn't go his way. For nearly a year, Austin and WWE didn't communicate. The standoff was hurting both sides. WWE lost their biggest star. Austin lost his platform and income. The situation was lose-lose. Eventually, Jim Ross brokered a meeting between Austin and Vince McMahon in a hotel room in Houston. The two men sat down and aired everything out. Austin admitted that while his business logic about the Lesnar match was correct, it was a waste of a money match. His method of handling it was wrong. Walking out without notice was unprofessional and hurt people who didn't deserve it. McMahon accepted Austin's apology, but there was a price. Austin agreed to pay a massive fine, reportedly around $250,000. He also agreed to return for one final run, which would end with his retirement match at WrestleMania 19 against The Rock. Austin later said he regretted how he handled it. Not his position, but his method. He should have communicated better. He should have found another way to make his point. But in the moment, he felt so disrespected and so frustrated that he just walked away. This was the ultimate example of Steve Austin Austin, abusing his leverage. For years, he had gotten away with doing things his way because he was right more often than he was wrong. The Austin 3:16 speech made them millions. Refusing to work with Jarrett didn't hurt business. Escalating with Tyson created mainstream buzz. Ignoring the go-home cue built fan loyalty. But the 2002 walkout was different. It wasn't chaos that paid off. It was just chaos. It hurt the company. It hurt Austin. It hurt the fans who showed up expecting to see him. There was no upside, just damage. And yet, even in his wrongness, Austin exposed something important. He showed that when you give a performer too much power and too much freedom for too long, they start to believe they're bigger than the system. Austin had operated outside the rules for so long that when he was finally told no in a way that mattered, he didn't know how to handle it except by leaving. Stone Cold Steve Austin made WWE more money than almost any wrestler in history. The numbers don't lie. The Austin 3:16 brand is still one of their top sellers decades later, even though Austin hasn't wrestled regularly since 2003. His feuds with Vince McMahon defined an entire era of wrestling and helped WWE destroy WCW in the ratings war. The Attitude Era, which saved the company from bankruptcy and turned it into a billion-dollar empire, doesn't happen without Stone Cold Steve Austin. Without Austin, WWE might not have survived the late 1990s. That's not an exaggeration. They were losing badly to WCW. They were losing advertisers. They were losing fans. They were losing money. Austin was the rocket fuel that launched them back to the top. His rebellious character connected with fans in a way no other wrestler had in years. He made wrestling cool again for adults. He brought mainstream attention back to the industry. But every moment of success came with a cost that often gets forgotten in the celebration of Austin's greatness. Austin forced the company to accept that they didn't fully control him. When they tried to script him, he improvised and went his own direction. When they tried to book him in feuds he didn't want, he refused and shut them down completely. When they tried to manage his time and his performances, he ignored them and did what he felt was right. When they tried to tell him no in a way that actually mattered, he walked out and left them scrambling to explain his absence to millions of fans. Management was stuck in an impossible position that got worse the more successful Austin became. They needed Austin more than he needed them, so they had to let him operate under different rules than everyone else. But those different rules created chaos throughout the entire organization. Lost feuds that could have made money, backstage tension with other wrestlers who resented Austin's special treatment, talent like Jarrett who felt slighted and eventually left the company to start their own promotion. Creative plans that had to be torn up and completely rewritten at the last minute because Austin decided he didn't like them. The irony is that Austin's rebellions usually worked out in the end and made everyone money. The 3:16 speech launched the Attitude Era. The Jarrett veto didn't hurt business. The Tyson chaos got mainstream coverage. The overtime defiance built fan connection. Even the 2002 walkout, as disastrous as it was, eventually led to one of the greatest retirement matches in WrestleMania history. But working doesn't mean it was controlled. Austin succeeded by being uncontrollable. Every time WWE tried to put him in a box, he smashed through it and made them richer in the process. That's powerful, that's iconic, but it's also dangerous. Because what happens when your entire business model depends on one person who refuses to follow the rules? What happens when that person's instincts are usually right, but not always? What happens when the chaos stops paying off and just becomes chaos? These are questions WWE had to grapple with throughout Austin's entire run. The company had built itself on structure and control. Vince McMahon was the boss. His word was final. Wrestlers were employees who followed orders. That system had worked for decades, but Austin shattered that system completely. He proved that when a star becomes big enough and valuable enough, they can dictate terms to the company instead of the other way around. The Austin era taught WWE a hard lesson that they're still learning today. Stars can be bigger than the company itself, and when they are, the company doesn't control the star anymore. The star controls the company. Every decision, every booking choice, every creative direction had to account for what Austin would or wouldn't agree to do. His preferences became company policy. His grudges became reality. His walkouts became full-blown crises that cost the company millions of dollars and months of planning. Vince McMahon built WWE on the idea that he was the ultimate authority. His word was law. His vision was absolute. His control was total. That's how he ran the company for decades, and that's how he wanted to keep running it forever. But for nearly a decade, that wasn't true. Steve Austin had just as much power, maybe more, because Austin could leave and McMahon couldn't afford to let him. This created a paradox at the heart of the company. The man who saved WWE was also the man who proved WWE couldn't control its own talent when that talent was valuable enough. Austin exposed the limits of corporate power in an industry built on the illusion of total control. When the glass shattered and Austin's music hit, fans went crazy. They knew something unpredictable was about to happen. They knew the rules didn't apply to Stone Cold. They knew he would do whatever he wanted. That was the appeal. That was the magic. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the embodiment of freedom in a scripted world. But behind the scenes, that same freedom was a nightmare for management. Every Austin appearance was a roll of the dice. Would he follow the script or go off on his own? Would he accept the booking or refuse it? Would he show up or would he fly home? They never knew for sure. The 5 moments we've covered, the improvised promo that mocked religion, the personal veto that killed a co-worker's push, the real fight with a boxing legend, the overtime rebellion that cost thousands, and the walkout that nearly ended his career. These weren't just great stories. They were warnings. They showed that even the most successful company in wrestling history, with the most powerful promoter in the business, could be held hostage by one man who understood his value and refused to compromise. Steve Austin knew what he was worth. He knew they needed him, and he used that knowledge to live by his own rules. Stone Cold made history his way, but in doing so, he showed the world just how little power the company really had when the glass shattered.